we aren't quite sure when round 2 is, and we're not sure how many rounds might follow that. What do we know at this point?
Well, we are expecting another vote tonight. This is what Jim Jordan wants. This is what his allies want. The question is, how many arms could he have possibly twisted between 12:30 and now to get to those 20 people to turn around? It's highly unlikely. The chances of us coming out of this with a speaker tonight are almost nil. The question then is, how long will the House be willing to keep doing this?
Right.
I mean, the White House has sent a $100 billion aid request for Israel over to the House. The Senate says, sure, we're going to take it up because we're a functioning chamber of Congress. And the House can't do anything. The Democrats may offer Patrick McHenry, the acting speaker, more powers, but there's no sense on the Republican side that they're willing to do that yet.
Well, yeah, so to continue the papal analogy here, if there's no white smoke on a third round, say, that becomes a much more serious conversation, right? Before we start digging through the conference, you've already got someone holding the gavel who seems to know how this works in Patrick McHenry.
Right, at least until a few crises are over. You know, we're 1 month, beginning tomorrow, to another shutdown.
Right.
And, you know, in January, it sort of went on fairly quickly, the 15 rounds. And Kevin McCarthy was pretty sure he was going to get there eventually. I don't know that Jim Jordan is the type to, at some point, say, OK, I don't have it. There's nothing in his public character that we know that would suggest that he would just go, OK, forget it. I'll let somebody else do it. So how long this goes on, I don't know.
Well, I guess it becomes a question then of if he gets just more pressure from inside the conference, knowing they have to deal with things like the government potentially shutting down on November 17th, or, Wendy, as you alluded to, a supplemental funding request from the White House. Jordan, of course, you covered the White House. We understand it's $100 billion that is being considered. Is this something the president is likely to try to accelerate, get to Congress very quickly, maybe to light a little bit more of a fire under the House to get this done? What's the timeline here?
You very well could, and they are facing some tight deadlines. Israel is locked in this conflict with Hamas that only seems to be escalating, so he wants to make sure that that money is going out quickly. They've also said, administration officials have said that they don't have much more money to give to Ukraine, so they need that to get acted on soon as well. And so the thought being that let's package this together with some things that might be more palatable to Republicans, like funding for Taiwan and border money, and let's see if we can get some votes there. But all of this is a moot conversation, again, until there's a Speaker of the House.
And the other notion is that the Matt Gaetz wing of the party, which is sort of America first and isolationist, they do not want to help the Biden administration, and they're not that interested in foreign interventions or foreign aid. So what's in it for them to speed this along?
The president, of course, is on his way to Israel later today. With this funding request in mind and a lot of uncertainty about what is ahead. The optics here, Jordan, could be challenging. I don't know exactly how this is being choreographed or how long he's even going to be there. But it's coming up against the backdrop of some pretty tough news today with a hospital that was apparently bombed in Gaza and a looming ground invasion. How does he thread the needle on this and actually benefit politically?
Yeah, look, this was going to be a difficult trip for President Biden no matter what, and it just got a whole lot harder with the news of this explosion at the hospital in Gaza. Now, you have Palestinian groups and Israel have traded blame for it, but regardless, it seems like opinion among the Arab countries have started to turn even more against Israel. So it's almost as if no matter what happened, this is just going to get more tricky diplomatically. And so the president is going over there to try and cool things down, but meanwhile, things are heating up. He wants to show leadership on the world stage, show solidarity with Israel, make sure that the message is being sent. We need humanitarian aid to go to Gaza. But if he doesn't come away with any assurances on those issues, he could come away looking a lot weaker. And so there are a lot of risks for this trip, not only politically, diplomatically, but also for his safety, because as we were just reminded, this was a active war zone. There are missiles flying. There's bombs going off. And so it's going to be a very tricky trip.
Yeah, I'm sure logistically for the Secret Service, this is no easy lift. And President Biden is making this, to your point, at his own great personal risk as well. You just were alluding to the other, nations in the Middle East who are surrounding this. And of course, it's not just Israel that the president is planning to visit. He then is expected to go to Jordan, where he was supposed to be taking part in a four-way summit with King Abdullah, the president of Egypt, and the president of the Palestinian Authority. And yet there were reports today that Abbas is not going to go there. How does that change things for Biden?
Optically, it changes in the sense that this is a blow to this notion that the president can be an emissary to both the Israelis and the Palestinians at the same time. But the reality is that Abbas doesn't have a lot to do with what's going on in Gaza. The Palestinian Authority only controls the West Bank, and even the Palestinian Authority itself is pretty weakened. So it's not as if Abbas was going to be able to snap a finger and make sure aid is flowing in. But it is, again, an optical blow to this notion of, I can go to Israel, show support, sort of ask them to put guardrails on their invasion, at the same time talk to this broad spectrum of the Arab world that is supporting the Palestinians and ensure them that aid is going to be on the way and the people are going to be protected.
With those guardrails in mind, we asked Israel's ambassador to the U.S. about some of the humanitarian concerns here on Balance of Power at this time yesterday. Here's what he had to say.
We did not start this war. We did not initiate this war. We did not want this war. It was started by Hamas. It was imposed on us. And to the extent that civilians are suffering or comes in harm's way, it's the main responsibility of Hamas, who trapped them, who uses them as human shields, who prevents them to move away from the war zone to the south, where we are establishing a humanitarian zone.
Wendy, to what extent will President Biden's message be one of restraint when he sees Benjamin Netanyahu in person?
Yeah, I think that's the message that he is bringing. The conversation has sort of shifted from, wow, look what Hamas just did to Israel, to, okay, now the death tolls have really shifted and there are twice or three times as many Palestinians dead as there are Israelis, and Israel's military is mighty and aggressive, and I think he really wants this to be contained to Israel-Hamas, because if Egypt or Jordan or Syria or Saudi Arabia or Iran get involved, then there's the real problem, and especially Iran. So, yes, I think his message there is, let's keep this, you have a right to defend yourself, you have a right to retaliate, don't turn this into a regional conflict.